Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
Welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
me, Scott Wilder.
Scott Wilder. We're living on the Wilder side again today. So, Scott, I don't consider you you're special, but a special guest is somebody new, hasn't been on the podcast before, something like that. So I just let you say your name and whatever.
It's great to be back here. I feel like I need to indulge and have a beer today, so maybe I'll take a walk on the Wilder side and while we're talking, have a sip of beer.
I doubt it, but maybe. it's a little early for me, and I'm actually off today. We have what we call a recharge day, or the day before, or the weekend before Easter off. So some people have it. They're calling it a recharge day. So and I'm doing some Peers Over Beers, and I appreciate you getting on today. So Scott, I wanted to you've had lots of experiences, and you've had a lot of things that you've done in communities, and you've been there, done that. I wouldn't say you're old, but you've been doing it for a long time.
I started when I was 5.
Jeez. I think we all have to some degree, haven't we?
It was a schoolyard community, though.
Exactly. Pushing other kids off the monkey bars and swings or whatever.
Exactly.
I'm just joking. I don't think Scott would really do that. Well, hey, I had a little topic that I wanted to talk a little bit about today and dive into, and hoping that you instead of an interview, and maybe it's sort of an interview, but it's more about helping me and maybe helping others to think about the events, whether they're virtual events, on-site events, in a bigger, maybe they're user groups. I'm not sure, to be honest, but I can tell you a little story. You ready for the story?
Yep.
For the pre-show, I already told you, but let's do it for the audience. So I built this program here at Reltio, and Reltio is a master data management company, so it's very complex. When you think of connecting business systems together to get like this view, this what we call 360 view of the customer, no matter what system that customer is in. And so, point is I'm trying to bring those leaders together and come up with something really cool from a community standpoint. Well, and I've built kind of these virtual webinars, one to go deep into our product, but also I'm kind of thinking about doing something a little bit different and thinking of kind of this thought leadership and bringing not just our technical users to the community, but also how do I think about, the higher level thought leadership type folks that might not be using our product, but think about data in a big way all the time, and things like that. So I've been averaging maybe 70 to 100 folks on our webinars, and it's pretty good. And so yesterday we had this webinar, or I call it the community show, with our founder and CTO, Manish Sood, and one of our VPs that did the moderation. And it was really good. We did I asked the community to ask questions. We had some CIOs and some even people that are technical ask Manish questions. So we kind of got all those questions, and it was live and everything else. So it was a lot of fun, recorded it, and I'll get some really good content out from it. And I think we had like 110 people show up, and I thought it was really good. And our CEO got in on it, at least kind of listened to it. I think he liked it, but, and he brought up though a question that, look, community is only almost a year old here, April 28th. So, we're just in a sense getting started, but, my CEO likes to think big, and I do too. And I think it's important, but I also think that the organization as a whole has to think big. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
All right. So here's my thing. So my CEO asked me, he goes, hey, Chris, how many attendees were there more so versus, attendees, employees versus prospects, customers, and things like that? Well, a little over half, which to me was a good amount, was employees, because they want to learn too. And I think 70% of our employees are new to the company anyways. So it's kind of good, for them to learn and stuff like that. But, and, I said back, oh, it was pretty good. We had a little over half were employees and a little less than half. And here's the numbers. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And he goes, well, Chris, I have a different view of what that means. So and I was like, all right. And he goes, well, he said, let me find it. We need community to be a marketing machine. He said, hundreds of events and thousands of external attendees every year. And I thought about that, and I was like, how am I going to do that? So, Scott, how would you do that? I'm asking you.
Oh, put me on the spot. I love it. So, first of all, I think a lot of companies and CEOs and people in the corner offices and people in the trenches are thinking of like, how to use community to be a lever for growth.
Yeah.
Right. And what's your go-to community strategy, your go-to market strategy? And in that, that requires, I think, a holistic, or at least the way I would think about it, kind of a holistic, ongoing movement. And what I mean by that is, and maybe this is what he was getting at, I don't know, is instead of thinking of it as an isolated event or moment, think about it as this whole program with a series of interaction type of events over time. And those could be, workshops, they could be conferences, they could be, we used to, HubSpot called them to have science days, networking, AMA, and right. So I've just thrown out a lot of like different formats.
Yeah.
And just like we talked about my age earlier on. So I used to watch The Wizard of Oz growing up.
I watched it too.
So just like the man behind the curtain, thinking about how do you orchestrate all these different types of events. And so how do you orchestrate them? How do you operationalize them, optimize them? And that requires, again, if you think about a community team, somebody who's really going to take charge and think about what's the calendar for this, who are the speakers. We're doing an event coming up for CrowdVicate in June. And so, one of the things my team is working on is the calendar of events and who the speakers are and the subject matters. And what we're talking about now is it's not a one and done deal. It's a series of things, and you're working with and you've heard me before talk about co-design, co-piloting, co-creating, working with your customers to figure out like, what is the right event to have for them? I feel like sometimes these big events, I guess now with COVID, everybody, is really happy to get back together in person, but sometimes the big events solve for the company. And so you really need to think about like how it's going to solve for the customer or user or whatever. And they might want more, we've also talked about in the past, these more intimate environments where it's a smaller group of people. So I'll stop right there because I just threw out a lot.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on it. Some of the things that you can go do, and I think he's probably talking about all of that, right? So there's something a little bit for everyone. I mean, you don't just solve the problem tomorrow, but I also think it has to be in the mindset of the leaders, his leaders, in a sense, right? So it can't just be the Chris Detzel thing. Now I can drive it and I can push it, but it takes what I think it was resources to, like you said, manage the speakers, the operational kind of things that you have to go do. Like if you're going to do these small events of 10 people, and you want to do 10 of them in 2 months, well, you got to know where to go. You still need speakers. You need to get people there. There's a lot of things, that you have to do, especially if you don't already have it. So you have to ramp it up. It's kind of like building this online community that I've already built from scratch. It's building this other thing from scratch, although you have some people to maybe pull from, to start trying to, from the community side of things to see what kind of events they want to go to see kind of what kind of discussions they want to have. So you already have some of that to really, pull of folks. You don't have to build it completely from scratch, but I still think the operationalization and everything else is from ground zero.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, one thing I really like what you said, and I think community people forget to mention it, is the importance of your coworkers and and the employees in
Yeah,
the company to help you build this village. Somebody said it takes whatever, a village to build something. I don't know. Anyway,
something like that.
something like that.
You've drank too much already.
I know. It's the morning, empty stomach,
Oh, no alcohol.
no
Okay. Well,
alcohol. But I think the other thing too is I would look at it as kind of an extension
mhm.
of what you're doing versus kind of an add-on. And then, I would do some numbers with him saying, okay, so if I get, 500 people and X number become leads and we convert them, I might be worthy of a head count. I might be worthy of getting, John Smith or Sally Rogers time,
Yep.
to help you out, because what I mentioned earlier, you can't do that alone, even if you drink a lot of coffee.
I drink a lot in the mornings, anyways. You can't drink. Now, the nice thing about some of these events, especially like if they're dinners and things like that, you could have some beers because that helps, right?
It slows me down, but yeah, I know most people,
Had to get the beer con. It's helpful because I'll tell you what, alcohol is helpful to get to know people, and it just allows you to kind of loosen up a little bit. Doesn't have to be beer, maybe just one, but what do you think about that?
I agree. And, unfortunately, my mind's going to some Shakespearean quotes, which I can't say here about alcohol. But for those who really want to know, you can contact me
Directly.
offline. But so anyway, so I think it's, depending on the relationship with the people you're working with, is kind of, say like, this is a team sport, right?
Yeah.
Like I put a lot of points on the board and I have, X number of people in the community, but now we're talking about, taking it to the next level and, do the numbers, right? Maybe you can get some money from the sales team or something by saying, look, I'm going to get you X number of leads. And I think the other thing, which I think you probably know this, is these events, don't have to be just about, you and your product and all that. It's just,
Absolutely.
no.
No, so that's something else I want to talk about because I think that is the key. At the end of the day, is I've been talking to my boss in the past, and this kind of all relates to each other because when I think of events, I think of content. I think of the people that are going to the events and what we're going to cover, and then how do we curate some of this content and use it for could be SEO, could be cool videos, a lot of stuff. So something that I've been thinking about, and I've started to reach out to people even within our company and outside the company, is thinking about the overall community. So today we have a technical community that is, learning about the product, getting the most out of the product, which is a highly important thing. Kind of this, I guess you could call it support community, which is, extremely important. But that's just a small piece of the pie, right? So this is all about how to use Reltio. Go in here, click this, click that. Here's a API on how to do that or the other, right? So that's one. Two is there's a whole data community out there. There's a whole, our product is a master data management tool that helps master data management professionals. But one of the things outside of the tool is how do you build a master data management practice? What does that entail before you even get to the tool, right? And what is data, in that is building a data governance practice, building a data quality, building all these things. And the topics at the high level are right there that I just said, right? Like, how do I start talking about those kinds of things? How do we start solving those problems? And then how does Reltio become more of a thought leader and more of a focused in that area? Because that's where you're going to get, VPs of data governance, VPs of, or chief data officers, et cetera, that are interested because they want to know, right? They don't really care about the tool per se. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't care about tools, but you start solving those problems and you start being and helping them solve those problems. They'll be like, Reltio is a no-brainer. We're going with it. You know what I mean?
No, I love that. In fact, it reminds me of experience I had back in the 1900s.
So old.
When I was consulting at SAP, and they really doubled down on data. They had a new product called HANA.
Yeah.
And, one of the strategies was to get to the data people, and they really
Mm.
focused on, the thought leadership angle at first. And what was interesting about that is there's so many different types of, data people, from the data scientists to the
That's
business
right.
analyst who is just like getting their feet wet in the space. There's another angle at it is, there's the people who really want to share their wisdom, the teachers versus the learners. And then,
Mhm.
you talked about like specific areas, governance and privacy. And so I think
Privacy is
that's,
huge.
yeah, it's huge. And I think it's a great way to think about it. And, just those are just like I just threw out, different ways you can. I'll mix my metaphors, slice the cake here, slice whatever. But
Mhm.
and I think for a company like yourself, here I am in the bleachers. I think there's a great opportunity to establish that leadership there
Yeah.
and guide people. And then not a hard sell. Then you introduce all, the product and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, and what I know we kind of started talking about events, but I'm starting to think about how do you have those kind of events? How do you have that kind of content? How do you have, you know, uh, the other piece of that was, within that whole data field, you have customers that are CIOs or CDOs or VPs of data, whatever. You have prospects that are potential people that are going to maybe buy your product one day. uh, you have partners, like the Accentures, Deloittes, and all those things that have those kind of practices that can maybe help partner with you. You also have influencers in that space that can really help you. Those are the things I'm thinking about in a big way. And I just got to figure out, one, get people on my side internally, right? I think there is, but I'm still a team of one, which hopefully that changes in the very near future. But yes, fingers crossed, we'll see. But that's what I want to go after, is that community, and have somebody run the technical community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the last piece I'll say is, from a virtual standpoint, there's a lot of opportunity just within the community. And it could be the technical community, or it could even be outside of that, is the events that I have going on have been very technical. But I've now started thinking outside of that, and more so, I'm about to execute on some of them, to think about those higher level virtual events, right? Like how to build a master data management practice from scratch, but then a whole series of master data, how to do that within the different areas of master data management without having to even talk about the tool itself, right? And then start creating that content. And I think I mentioned the other piece of that is, and that's how you get, one, I think, the community engaged and involved, because you start doing that, you find people within your organization to help you, not just be those practitioners in a sense, or show that you can do it. Then you start bringing others in. You know what I mean? And then and then you can have different types of events. One is every month, maybe you have like a thought leadership. Maybe you have one or two kind of go into the product, every week. We have something really for the audiences, and you start kind of seeing who's showing up, who's not showing up, and what audiences are doing what. If you could tell, I'm very excited about this. Like, it's been going through my head. I
Yeah, I
just
love
wanted
it.
to bounce
This is
this
great.
off somebody like you.
Yeah,
So
no, I think it's really great. And I think about, all the different personas in your ecosystem, and, pick two or so to start with.
yeah,
Don't try and boil the whole data ocean. But I think that's definitely the way to go. I mean, dirty secret here is that I'm about to launch a podcast.
what the hell? No, okay, awesome.
And but that's how we've approached it, is really thinking about, like, there's different personas we could go after. Like in the data world, you talked about several, and working with your team and figuring out, like, if it's a top of the funnel exercise where you're trying to establish thought leadership, get people to your site, kind of like what HubSpot does with its academy, its blog, etc. Who do where do you want to focus first?
Yeah.
So, and data's not going away. Data is like, there's more and more opportunities, and more people are trying to figure out how it impacts their careers.
nuts. So tell me about this podcast. Is it just a Scott Wilder thing, or is it a company thing, or what?
It's a company thing. It's going to be
Awesome.
customer-led growth podcast, and basically looking at kind of two audiences. Is the so what we're really trying to do is, and I'm off topic here a little bit of what we're talking about.
That's okay.
But
no, because I'm going to bring it back around because I'm going to say something about this.
Okay. So we think there's an evolution going on of what's happening in customer marketing, and historically you have a lot of people doing customer marketing type of activities, but they're not really working together. And now what we're seeing that groups like advocacy and references and communities are starting to report into customer marketers, and we see that the next evolution of that, the extension of that, is going to be customer-led growth. And so there's people who are going to be at the CMO strategic level. That's one audience. And then there's people who are in the digital trenches, the practitioners. And so this podcast is going to really offer two tracks. Maybe we're building the CLG, the podcast network, starting there with these two different shows. But that's how we're thinking about it.
What's the how many shows are you planning on doing, like a week or a month, or
2 a month?
2 a month. Okay.
So I've learned so much here from you, and so taking a page from your playbook, we'll go for it.
I'll be very interested to see how this goes, and the reason is because I believe that to create content, you need a funnel of content, other content. You have to have a reason to run. Let's say a podcast, for example, and you talk about some really good stuff. You can create a blog, you can create short clips, you can create a video potentially, from it. So it could be a video, it could be audio, it could be a couple of blogs, depends on how long it is, and you can cut those clips and then push them out to, it could be audio clips, could be whatever you want. And I think that's important. And the reason I think that's important, Scott, is one, it gives me a funnel of content to write about and think about. And I don't have to make shit up, and then two, I think if you get the entire marketing team and the organization, it doesn't have to be just a marketing team, but social, certainly the marketing pieces, but also you get the organization excited, maybe the CS or the sales or whoever, posting that stuff on LinkedIn, posted on just everybody posting stuff, and slowly but surely getting the word out, and when you think of kind of those blogs, for SEO and all that kind of stuff, it's just pushing out good, clean, relevant, content to users that are interested in that. And so, that's how I'm looking at it. And that's, I think, a podcast is great. So I don't know if you have anything about if that's sort of what you're thinking or not really, or, what's kind of the.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you that, podcast is a great.
And it's sticky. Podcasts are sticky.
It's sticky, but you're putting, you're creating something that then it's fairly easy to repurpose. For example, Sam Shepler interviewed me recently, and he turned, the one Vcaster interview into like 6, different things that he could post on LinkedIn. And then, there's probably a blog after that. There's a transcription. And then I think, it's getting, we talked once about, these like growth squads are getting cross-functional people in a room and saying, okay, we have this asset now. How do we leverage it across our different channels? And even, even with like sales enablement, I mean, think about, if you go down the path and do podcasts around data, right? They're probably like have some customers who are new to the category.
Yeah.
Right. And so you don't want to start talking about all the cool widgets you're selling. You want to like, figure out like in that kind of pre-sale stage, or it can be post-sales too, of like, you have this content that was created via podcast that one was put into text or whatever, and then you can share with them. So I think this whole reusing mindset that you have, repurposing content is right on.
Well, I think it's the only way to do it to me. And I think it's highly important. I like that, man. I think I might have saw one of those posts or whatever. Maybe did you repost it or something or no?
I just reposted it, but he's really the magician behind the curtain. Yeah, everybody's behind the curtain today, Oz, but he's the one who really put
Full
it
of jokes
together.
today. It's great.
But I really like what he did, and just being transparent. I reached out to him and said, like, tell me how, tell me how you made me look good. But
Good.
I think and there's people out there who are doing some really interesting things with repurposing content. And
yeah,
I think that's, as content creators, it's a great opportunity for us to learn. So
I think community is all about content, and whether it's engaging content. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Like when I say that, it sounds like Chris, but I don't think people get that sometimes. Like it's all about what problems are you trying to solve in that particular community. You know what I mean? And if you stay with that purpose and create content that's relevant, then I think for the most part, people will engage in it. If they're, so, and people engage in different ways. So that on the podcast thing, so I'm going to get a little technical and I'm very interested now. And one is, maybe that's the offline conversation, I don't know, but so as you kind of look at strike one, baseball seasons, I don't know, but anyways, so yeah, all right. Or as I kind of think about a business podcast, right? Like, how do you tie that into your main website, and how do you, I mean, you'll get transcripts and all that stuff and put that into the podcast area, for the SEO, but, are you making sure you're tying that into the main website so that gets the SEO juice, if you will? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's all connected. And
Okay.
that's where you really need that team. At my current company, there's another team that runs the website.
Yep.
And so really figuring out, if it's an SEO play, like what is the goal there, what content pillars they want, things like that. I think it's also, something for me is structuring the podcast so I could repurpose the content in certain categories and put that on the site. But yeah, definitely, thinking, having the end in mind and working backwards, I think is the way I think about it. So.
Yeah, because as I kind of think about the beauty of podcast is you do a 30-minute to an hour long podcast. I mean, that transcript full of words, of really juicy words. Yeah. You know what I mean? That is relevant to your audiences. I mean, if that's what you're talking about. And so just pushing that into today, the way this podcast work is, I just use Zoom, and Zoom has kind of a transcript. It's not great, but it's good enough. And I just push that into Transistor is the podcast company. And then, I just push the audio and the transcript into that. But I just recently started doing that probably 5 or 6 months ago, which, before I had to pay for the transcript. So that's a new feature that Zoom has,
Have you looked at like StreamYard and things like that?
Mm-mm.
Or Riverside or
StreamYard and Riverside? I did look at Riverside and it looked really cool.
Yeah.
That's that video that, besides Zoom, right? That you're talking about. Yeah, that looked really cool. Have you used it?
So for StreamYard, it's definitely a tool that I'm considering. So basically you're doing what we're doing now.
Yeah.
But it makes it easier to publish on social media platforms. And then you could use a third party. I think I have to look at the transcription process there.
But that stuff's becoming way more and more important, right? So this is all relevant, in my opinion, to community stuff because of the beauty of transcripts and content that you can push out to, if you're doing an interview and it's just question, answer, you could put a nice little paragraph about what it's about and then the interview.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, so Scott, this has been really good. I know it's probably not as long as they normally are, but I really wanted to just pick your brain, one about the event piece, the content piece, and kind of what your thoughts were. And this is extremely valuable to me. Hopefully it's value to others.
Well, this has been really helpful for me because it's just, I'm thinking a lot about events right now. And, it's one thing to kind of think about it. It's another thing to try and articulate what you're thinking
Yeah.
for others. And anytime you want to volley some ideas back and forth, let me know.
Oh, I will. I mean, I have a lot of things that's going on right now. And so I think, when you think of that thought leadership piece, that's a big opportunity from a content. And then when you think of the events piece, so maybe trying to figure out how to tie those two in so I don't have too much work to do. Like I like to kill 3 birds, 1 stone. Not really, but just do multiple things at one time. Whether it's content or engagement and those kinds of things. I think about that a lot. And I think there's a huge opportunity here at Reltio. Obviously, Scott, I think, for crowdsource, that's where you work, right? Crowdvocate. Shit. Crowdvocate. My apologies. There's lots of opportunity there, and you guys are already starting to do some cool stuff. And I'll be listening in on, or at least picking your brain about the podcast thing, because I'm thinking about that too. So
yeah, anytime. It's always great to be here. And I think, you're it might seem overwhelming.
It is.
But you're definitely in a great position to really start some of these programs. Like just think about if you can figure out the right cadence for events.
I agree.
Your sales team and success teams will be really happy.
Everybody will be happy if we can do that right.
And your CEO will be happy. Don't forget that guy.
He's definitely an important part of the happiness. Scott, thanks so much. I'm Chris Detzel for another Peers Over Beers and
Scott Wilder.
Living on the Wilder Side. Thanks, Scott.
Take care.